So Substance, I'm inside of here. This is Hans' version that I textured, the one that we downloaded. And just multiple layers, lots of little details on him, which are cool. Fun model to actually work with. So how do we get him up to this point? Now that we have the Hans template downloaded, we just need to open it up. So I'm going to go to File, New, and under File, New, we're going to choose Template PBR, Metallic Roughness, Algorithmic, Select, and I'm going to go to that folder that I basically extracted all those things from the file, and then you'll see there's an FBX Hans right there. So I'll say that is going to be the file I'm going to use. Now, Hans comes with all those textures with him. Oops, hold on. Yes, question.
I don't see it. I have the file here.
So, and you unzipped it, double click on it, and pull all those, or just say extract, and it should extract to a folder, and then that's where you get them. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to switch the document resolution to 2K. So I've selected up at the top where it says select. I chose the FBX. I switched it to 2K. And where it says add, I'm going to actually import some of those maps that came along with him. For right now, I'll just select all of them. And we'll turn them off later and hide them, but for right now I'm just going to select all of them because they have the normal maps, the ID maps, which we'll talk about, and that's what I need. So we have all these, and I'm just going to say open, and you see it has the ID maps, the normal maps, all the good stuff down here. And now I'm going to hit OK. Alrighty, so here is Hans. And you notice he's not very detailed. I mean, well, he is, but he doesn't have normal maps or anything like that on him. So I've got to turn those on. Okay. So before I start turning those on, are there any questions? You guys got Hans in there? Let's see. So I'm going to bring in the primary normals, the ones that are from the geometry. And up at the top right, if you're using this configuration as set, you'll see I have a texture set list where it says body, head, helmet, and shoes. Do you guys see that? Top right, body, head, helmet, shoes. And what those are each one of these is a material that's assigned. So there's one material set to the body, one material set to the head, the helmet, and the shoes. Okay. So I'm going to go to the body first, select the body. And where it says texture set settings beneath that, do you see that? Click on that. And I'm going to expose it a little bit more. And when we scroll down here, do you see there's a slot for normal map, world space normal, the ID map came over, but ambient occlusion, all this other stuff. Where it says select normal map, I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to choose the body normal. And that turns on, and you'll notice now we have details on his body. You see that? So now we have pockets. We've got like some of the stitching. We've got folds. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the head. Same deal. Select normal map. And I'm going to choose the head normal. Now we could see he has a mustache and a scar, because I know he's Hans and he's German, but I just still want to call him French, so we'll call him Jacques. Go to the helmet. Select normal. Attach the helmet normal. Go to the shoes. Select normal. Shoes. And now we should see rivets on the helmet, pockets and stitching on the body, mustache and some scars and stuff on the face, and on the shoes we now see shoelaces and details based off of the normal map. So before I go any further, questions? Did that work for everyone? It's all lovely? Yeah, sure. Uh-huh. So now I've got those down, and basically this character had 4 materials assigned to different, one material assigned to different parts of his body, or the character itself. 1 to the body, 1 to the head, 1 to the helmet, 1 to the shoes. The way Substance works is I can assign different things to this character based off of the UVs or an ID map, or just painting like an alpha. Multiple ways. This guy comes with an ID map. But we're going to I'll show you that later. But for right now, I'm going to go to the body. And what you want to do is now click on the layers. And on the layers, I'm on the body shader, layers, and I want to start with his uniform. Okay. So I'm going to go down to the bottom. And if I do a search for fabric, you'll see that there's different fabrics I could use. And once again, what we're doing is, I'm not worried about the color. The color I'm going to change. I'm worried about the pattern that I want. Okay? So if I'm under, I've chosen the materials, I just did a search for fabric, and we could see that there's these different, if I just put the cursor over it, there's these different fabrics, like fabric bamboo, this tight weave. All of these are just like threaded fabrics of some sort, or canvas type fabrics. And I choose the one that I want to use as the foundation for our friend's uniform, right? So let's try out a couple. I'm going to drag one. So I drag one into my layers, and we see it's this, right? So I dragged the viscous tight weave, which is, you look at it and you're like, well, I don't know. That looks kind of, I don't know. Jacques might get a little teased, when he's suiting up, because it looks kind of meaty, Now, granted, I could change this a lot, okay, but maybe that's not the one I want. If I don't want it, I'll just trash that one, and I will choose another one. Now, the cool thing is, once I pick one, let me just show you this. Let's pick. Yeah, that'll work. The fabric soft denim. Now, what's wrong with it right now that we could see? Yeah, it's really large. You know what? I'm going to choose something a little different. I'm actually going to not use this one. Let's trash this. I'm going to go to Smart Materials. Let me see if there's one in here that I actually like a lot. It's nice to kind of look and see before we go. Yeah, there's some ones that are like, oh, hey, this is a camouflage. Nah, okay, fine. I'll just use the regular materials. So be it. Fine, Jacques. Okay, so let's, alright, fine, we'll try this one. Oh yeah, we're about to do that. So what I'm going to do is I picked one and I said, wow, you know, number one, way too red, number one, way too big, so we're going to have to do some tweaking. So what I go, once I select one and I go down into the properties of that one, so for this one, I'm going to do a few things. I chose the viscous tight weave. We're just going to start with that. I'm going to make sure that I turn on height map. Do you guys see this down here? So on the properties, if I scroll down, there's a spot under material color, roughness, all that. I'm going to click height and watch what happens when I turn it on. This is with it off. This is with it on. Did you see that? So it's actually bumping it out now. So I made sure it's turned on. But that tiling is way too big. So where it says scale under fill, let's try and drop, like adjust that. Let's say that's at a 6. That's at an 8. Now is also a good time that if I actually just click on some of these other materials, I could see how they look. See that? So if there's one that I like better, now's a good time to choose it. Ah. You know what? I like the fabric knit. I could do a lot with that. That'll work. Yeah, it's nice. Tighten it up so much it doesn't look like it's knitted. So I'm at like a scale of 10 on there. Okay. So I like the pattern, but unless Hans the Jock, is actually, you know, doing snow stuff, it's probably going to be way too bright. You know, it's like, yeah, you're not going to blend in, man. So we need to actually tweak that a little bit. So I'm going to scroll down to where the fabric color is and give him, let's change his color. I'm going to start off with a darker green like that. Now you guys can choose if you want something different, but kind of like that. So I have that layer selected. I scroll down all the way to the bottom, where in this particular material it's called fabric color. It depends on what, the parameters are dependent on what material you chose. Okay. So for this one it has a fabric color that I can choose. And I also have to make sure that the color is turned on, obviously. So I have color, height, roughness, metal. All these guys are turned on. Let me just pause real quick, just make sure. So I've got my base, got a good mid color. Cool. And I'm digging that so far. So now Actually, let's make it just a little bit darker. Maybe right about there. Cool. All right, so I've got this down. I can also look at technical parameters and check this out. With this particular one, I can change the hue and saturation. I can adjust the contrast of it. Ooh, I like that. That's looking cool, like that. See? The luminosity of it. And the normal intensity. So if I want the normal map to be cranked up more, or the height range actually will crank it up more. There we go. So I can make it rougher. Do you see that? So the height range is changing how strong it is, the fabric. Okay. So I'm saying, yep, I've tweaked that out. Now, what I need to do is make sure, right now, he looks like he's wearing a onesie. You know? He's just asking for, you know, for his pals to mess with him. So we're gonna we're gonna you know, save him a little bit, and we're gonna mask it out so it's only on the part that is an actual jumpsuit, you know, a flight suit, and then we're gonna tweak that out. So for that, I need to apply a mask to this. So I'm gonna right click on that layer. And up at the top, it gives me a few options. A white mask, a black mask, a bitmap mask, or a mask using a color selection. So a white mask would basically be, we'd see no difference. It would show everything. A black mask would hide it everywhere, and then we go back and tell it where we want it. A bitmap mask would be if I had an image already that I'm bringing in as the mask that I've already created previously. And then a mask with a color selection is using an ID map, right? So the ID map is where somewhere there's that image that it brought in. I could use that and just say, hey, you know what? Wherever it's yellow or wherever it's blue, that's where I want this material to show up. And I would have color-coded that in a program like Maya previously and made the image for it. We're going to ignore that because we haven't gone over ID mask yet. I'm just going to say black, which hides it. And then I want to go back and make sure it's only on the areas that I want it to be. So I have the mask selected. There's a blue box around the mask. And I'm going to go by the UVs. I don't want to hand paint it because that's just a waste of time. It's organized properly that I could just drop it onto the shells that are the clothing. So all the way to the left, I'm going to click on the fourth icon down, Polygon Fill, which takes me to this. So the fourth icon down, Polygon Fill, and I now see the wireframe. And over to the right, it's asking me, how do you want to fill? By triangles? By quads? By the entire mesh? Or by chunks, which are UV shells? I want to go by chunks, UV shell. White shows, so I want to paint white. And all I have to do is just click on the shell, either in the 2D view or the 3D view, to fill it. Watch this. Click. Boom. There it is. And now I could just click on his arms where they're at. Boom. Boom. And his collar. I'll do that as well, even though I'll have a different overlay for that. Or I could wait and then just do a different material for it. Oh yeah. You know what? Let's leave his... I'll do something different with his collar this time. So these are the ones I'm working on. His arms and his spot here. And you'll notice now, if I go back to my brush tool at the top left, now it's applied only to where I want it. Isn't that cool? Makes life a lot easier. Dig in. So I've got this down. Awesome. I want to add some wear and tear to this. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's a nice quick way of doing this that you'll like. I've got this. I'm going to rename that layer. So I'm going to say green fabric base. I'm going to right click on that layer and duplicate it so it's on top. Rename this one fabric faded. So I have two layers, the original one and this one on top. And on this one, I'm going to tweak it out. Okay. This one, I'm going to go in. I'm going to go to my attributes and change the parameters, like the color and stuff of this one. Let's make it... Let's see, I'm going to go in. Let's adjust... the luminosity, turn down the saturation. So I'm fading it out. This is the original one. This is the one that I've faded out. So it's brighter and more desaturated. Okay. You see that? And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to mask this whole thing. So I just black masked it. I right clicked, add black mask. And now when I go in with a brush, let me choose a brush and I paint in the, whatchamacallit, in the mask. The mask is selected. And let me choose like a dirt brush, control right mouse button to shrink it down, control left mouse button, left to right to fade it. And now, eyes up front for a second so you guys can see this. I could start to paint in a little wear and tear in certain areas. You see that? If I hold down Shift and click, I can do straight lines in here, which is nice. So click, Shift, left mouse, click. And I'm going to start to fade it out in certain areas. Let's add a little more spacing to it to vary it up. If I increase the brush size, lower the intensity, I could start to add some faded areas a bit to his uniform here. So you see how that's looking so far? Check it out. So I'm basically starting to like kind of age it and add a little bit of damage to it in the areas that extend outward, which would make more sense. Because those are the areas that protrude outward, and those are the areas that are going to pick up more, you know, rub up against things more. So as a result, what's going to happen is you're going to get more fade on the threads and stuff where it's rubbing up against stuff. Now, since I'm doing this in layers and it's non-destructive because I'm using mask, I can always go back in and decide later on, you know what? Jacques would look better if he has on like a tan mustard sort of outfit, or I just want to swap out the materials. And all of those little extra details based off the mask and stuff that I'm doing would carry over. I would not have to redo it. So that's one of the main powers of it, is that I can go in. If you press C and keep pressing C, you're cycling through the different views of the materials. You see that? Metallic, normal, normal height plus mesh, mask, base color. Pressing M brings you back to the material. So you're good. The benefits of being in front of me, and I can see, like, hey, by the way.
I was thinking about Mudbox. I pressed B to change it.
Yes. You will find that bouncing between programs, as I just did just now, and, you know, using some shortcuts in one can be a little screwy in others. So,
Thank you.
sure. So you could start to see how I'm starting to get just some of these little details and fade out some areas. Jinkies. Later on, I'll put a dirt pass on him, but right now I'm just kind of fading out some stuff. So funny. I wasn't doing it until you said it. Now I keep hitting B or whatever, or just some of the other buttons to actually do it. See what you did? So as I start to do this, and I could start to fray them a little bit and kind of scruff up his outfit a little, give it some wear and tear, we could start to see where we can really start to change some stuff up, right? I could duplicate it again and totally change the color of the pockets, or later on I might just go in and then just put leather. Maybe there's leather stitched in for the pockets onto there, so they're a little more durable. So, but as I go through, then I could even start to really cut into it. So let me show you that. If I make a brand new layer on top of that, I'm going to go to materials and choose my favorite, the default plastic blue material, because I can always tweak the bejesus out of that one and it has all the properties I need. And I want to make some cuts into his outfit. So I'm going to choose this one. I'm going to choose a different color. I might even sample a color. I have to click on that little eyedropper and then pull it over whatever it is I'm trying to get. Okay, so if I chose that, I'm going to go height, turn height on, and I'm going to push the height inward so it actually physically cuts in. I don't want roughness on it. It's not supposed to be shiny. And I'm going to choose a brush like, where are you? The fiber line. Let's try that one. And make sure it's set to follow path. Yes. All right, that might work. So I'm going to go in. Let's push the height down even further, make it kind of deep. There we go. So you see I'm like, I can cut into his clothing. Maybe he got grazed, you know. I'll turn down the opacity to this. Maybe it's been stitched up like that or whatever. That's going to depend on if I raise it or lower it. Like if I want it to look like it's been stitched, like, oh man, he took a shot, you know. He got grazed by a bullet and then he's so tough he just like, you know, sat there and stitched it back up. So maybe it grazed him in the shoulder and we could just have something like that. Oh yeah, that'll work. Check that out. Let's crank up that height even more. So maybe stitch that up. And depending, like here's the sharp line, so I could do that one. Because maybe this one actually cuts inward. And I might darken it just a little bit. Okay. I could even go like right in the center of that one and either raise it or heighten it just to... That's kind of cool, like that. If I want to add stitches, I would add a brand new layer. There's one for stitches that we can tweak out. Check this out. And let's say we're going to make this one more of a yellowish tone, like a mustard kind of tone. And we're going to tighten that up and maybe spread. Let's make it a little bit lighter. And we're going to go in, and if we look at the parameters for the stitches, we can actually adjust the spacing so they're a little bit more spread apart. So check this out. And we also want to go in, and I want to, yeah, the height's bumped up, so check this out. That's still too big. There we go. You see that? So now I can start adding stitches. So let's go here. Look at that. How cool is that? So you see how easy it is to start adding these details in here now? Look at that. Isn't that cool? So now I've got some stitches on there. I've got some wear and tear. Later on I'd add maybe some mud and stuff that's chalked up on them. What about some of these other materials? So like if I went to like these belts here and I add a brand new material like let's go to materials. Let's choose a leather. Oh yeah. So let's say I'm going to choose a leather bag. Boom. And once again, it populates the whole thing and all the normals and everything, and I don't want them everywhere. So once again, I add a black mask, polygon fill, and just start filling up where do I want this leather to be. That'll be a different one. Let's just start with that. And now I'd want to tweak out the material of this. Let's make it a darker. Remember, you can scale it. So you say, wow, that's not. Let's scale that. Yeah, that's better. That's nice. I can change its properties, like how shiny it is or how rough. That's looking nice. But I would also want to add some tweaks. So I could add stitching to this. I could have it so like some leathers and stuff, it's a different leather on the back if I really wanted to go into that amount of detail. Or I could do that thing again, which is really sweet, where I could go in, add a blank layer on top of it like I had. Come here. Oh, that's the stitching. Yeah, start naming your stuff, because otherwise you're going to start to like go, what was that? What's on that layer? So I make a brand new layer. Choose a different brush. Once again, I'm just going to go back to my little default material because I really like that one. My little plastic that I can change. And then I can tweak the bejesus out of this one. So we're going to not make it quite as dull. And we want a height map so we can push it inward. And, oh, that's not bad. Let's pick... So look at me adding some details to the actual leather belt, kind of tweaking it out a little bit, so I could start to add some wear and tear to it. And if I want to add like some just sort of cracks kind of deal, just be careful because you can actually hit areas you don't want to hit. Oh, that reminds me. The tangent wrap, I'm going to switch it to just UV. And that will make it just a little bit easier to deal with. But see, I'm starting to add these little details in here. And then I would do the same. I'd bring in like a metal, kind of a brass or whatever for the belt buckle, you know, and just keep on adding these materials, layering them and tweaking them out as I see fit. For something like the little hoops that are over here, I'd need a brand new layer. Pick a default brush. And then pick a chrome. Or, let's just do brass. You see that? If you have a mask, so if you go to an alpha, hold on, see if there's one inside of here. Let's look. There's a coffee circle. There's one in here someplace. I just have to find it. Or you could just make your own and bring it in as an alpha. Right? So you have all these guys in here. Like if I chose this coffee circle, bring it up. See? There you go. Okay. Okay. Isn't that cool? Then if I say, oh no, I can just erase this one. Go back to the brush. There we go. So either you find what you want or you just make it and bring it in. Like you could see there's even like buttons and stuff. And there are, where are they? Tools, like the screw bolt. You see where I can actually make a literal screw if I wanted to, or a button or whatever it is I wanted. I could even do metal stitching. See that? Maybe he's just so tough he used staples to actually seal him. So I'm like, oh yeah, it's just a flesh wound. Give me that staple gun. Yep. You can have bullet holes, impact, that kind of stuff. There's lots of stuff. And you can bring in your own textures. Here's normal map hard surface stuff. So this is where if you want to like do button screws, different things, like just using this as the normal map that you generate, and then you apply it to any material that you want. There's also grunge for like dirt and things like that. So there is an immense amount, and it is totally wide open to you bringing in your own textures, your own mask, and just going, you know, going absolutely nuts with it. So if there's no other questions with that, then I could go into how to do the skin, because there's a lot of like base skin materials you can actually start with. Questions on the body or just some of the other stuff? You guys cool so far? It's a pretty fun program. You can do some really awesome stuff in a short amount of time. So I would do the same technique for everything that's on here. His gun holster, his gloves, and weather them. And then you could even do stuff that based off of creases and things could actually generate different things going on. So in other words, there's these things called generators that you can actually apply, and even procedurals for that matter, that you can use to affect different things. Okay, I can even use procedurals as mask and stuff to make patterns. I could make tiling textures inside of here of wood and metal and marble and all sorts of stuff, even weaves like this, and make my own material from scratch using that weave and then that pattern and then tweaking it out. But when I'm ready to go to other parts like his head, I could actually, if I want to do all of them, I could just hide his helmet just by turning off the material up at the top right. Eek! Jacques has no eyes. I guess. Yeah, we could just always add those later. But if I didn't have him with the helmet on and I wanted to show that, then I could just turn that off, go to the head, and then go to the layers and start with a foundation of base material for the skin, and then build up on it. And I wanted to show you guys that. So I've hidden the helmet just so we could see. I'm now on the head material. And I'm going to go in under materials and type in skin. And you'll see there's a plethora of skin. You know what? I'm actually going to use a smart material for this one. So I'm going to use the one called Skin Face, which is a smart material. A smart material has a bunch of different properties built into it. You can actually make a smart material. And so what I love about these is that you can actually take this. I'm going to drag the smart material into my layers. And it gives me a base color for Jacques. And if I look really close, look at all these little details like pores and different things that are on him. You see that? But I can go in, and if you see there's a folder for the skin face. If I open this up, look at all these properties that are in here. So some of it is SSS, which is subsurface scattering. Aha. One is AO for ambient occlusion. So what I'm going to do is he doesn't have an ambient occlusion. I'm going to generate one for him real quick. So I'm going to go to the texture settings with the head selected. And right down here where it says Bake Mesh Maps, I'm going to click on Bake Mesh Maps, and it pulls this up. And this is how I can generate ID maps, curvature maps, ambient occlusion maps, all those things. I'm going to shut all of them off, say none, and I want to generate an ambient occlusion. And so the ambient occlusion is basically saying, hey, wait a minute. You don't have a high-res mesh to generate this off of. I'm going to say, that's all right. Use the low-res mesh as the high. Otherwise, I'd bring in my high-res version that I've gotten from Mudbox or whatever and pull it into here. So I'm using just an ambient occlusion for the head. And the defaults are actually pretty good. So I'm just going to leave those, and I'm just going to say bake all texture sets. Or bake head mesh maps. Boink. Oh, haha, I forgot about that. It generated the... Do you know why his head is dark here? Any guesses? The helmet is still there. I forgot about that, jinkies. You know what? For right now, I'll get rid of that. I'll just Say nay. Fine, we won't deal with it. That's okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tweak out some of these settings so I can get Jacques closer to what I want to start off with. So the skin base, I can go down and tweak that out in the properties. Like, what is his base color? Do I want it to be a little more pinkish? Do I want it to be a little more yellowish? Whatever. Give him just a little bit more color to him. Like that. Now, I'm going to start to go and adjust some of these other guys. Like, if I zoom in, I want you to see this. Skin detail are those little light marks. Do you see them when I shut them off and on? So I have to decide now, do I want those little light marks on there, kind of breaking it up, or do I want to add my own? I'm just going to shut them off right now. Skin pores. Oh, look at this. Without pores, with pores. You see that? Now, I can just select that layer and tweak the pores so they aren't as strong, or increase them. Look at that. Ew. So we crank it up like this, or we take them away. So you add, like, how much do you want? The contrast of them. Tweaking out all these settings with the skin pores. The patches is breaking up the specularity. That's actually not too bad. But if I wanted Jacques to look smoother or stuff, I would actually do that. Or I could go in and create a mask for any of these and lighten it up in certain areas. Now, you'll notice right now, subsurface scattering doesn't seem to be doing anything, and that's because I'd have to go to the material and basically I would have to kind of turn this on because it's not doing it. So there is a parameter of it that's here for the scattering, and I could start messing with this. But you'll notice no matter what I do, we're not seeing it turn on at all, right? So let me show you how this turns on. Right now we're using a PBR rough metal, but if I go into here, there's PBR SSS, which is subsurface scattering. And when I turn that on, now watch this. So there's a few ways of doing it, but now there's a subdermal color. And I can actually turn this on. And look at that. Do you see that? So now if I change the lighting in here, we could see that actually changing. And remember to move your lighting around. It's shift right mouse button to move the lighting. If I want to be able to see that, I just click on my display settings above the shader settings and turn on the opacity of the environment, and I can cut down the blur so we could see it more. See? I can also turn on shadows, which are like, holy smack-holy, that's really strong. If I just lighten the opacity of the shadows, that will make life a lot easier. But then you can still get the shadows, but it's not like, you know, that dramatic pitch black shadows. That looks a little bit more realistic. See? Alright, so we got those things kicking. And now I could go in and start to add some color and variations to our little friend here. And to do that, I would start to add some layers. And let's choose, once again, go back to that material I love. I could either paint some of these other skin textures onto him, What I like to do, though, is just go in, choose my base plastic material. Let's choose a reddish color that's way more faded. And then I'm going to go to my brushes and choose a softer pattern, shrink it down. People make the mistake when they're doing something like the lips of trying to make it like too heavy and just going like this. And all of a sudden, it looks, you know, it's fine if he's wearing lipstick. It's just that's not what I'm actually going for. So what we need to do is start to build that up. I'm going to choose something a little darker. I also want to adjust. Now, on that note, if I was trying to get like, you know, lipstick or like strong, then I could, yeah, go in and start to pull that, you know, pull that off. But that's not what I'm going for. I want something a little more subtle, little less metal, little, you know, I do want there to be a little bit of a shine to it, but not a lot. Just a slight shine to it. And what I'm going to do, let's pick I'm going to lower that pressure really low, even lower, and let's make it darker. It's still too much. And, oh, there we go. Do you see that? I'm slowly building that up and blending it with the skin so it's not... Do you see I'm starting to just add color to it as opposed to just trying to draw like a, you know, like take a marker and just go right across the lips, you know, where it's like this hard edge, because that's not how our lips typically are. And I also want to go in and make sure in my settings that it's not tangent wrap, it's set to UVs. I'm painting on the UVs. And just start to bring that. If I want to do both sides at once, I turn on symmetry right up here. This little, these little pyramid kind of sides. And then you'll see this like flip like this. And just start to slowly, it'll be darker as it goes in towards the mouth, and then fade as it goes out towards your skin, towards the outer part of the lips. And that's going to give you a much more realistic looking skin tone. And even that might be a bit much, but just let's lower that down even more. Stroke opacity, bring that down. Yeah, that's better. Much, much better. And just kind of blend that out, and that's going to look a lot more realistic. Okay. I can also paint directly on, especially if I have it set to UVs, and just go into here and just paint that in the center a little bit more. See that? And the cool thing is, since it's on a layer all by itself, if it's too heavy, I could just take that layer and bring it down a little. See? So I could also add blemishes. You know, if I want his cheeks a little rosy, just add a little bit. Make sure the spacing is out, and just start to add a little, just a little bit of color to him. See that? I could add just some skin variants, just really lightly, just kind of run through. Huh? The normals? Oh, you mean right here? Yeah, right there. That, I think, is partially the lighting. So, if amazingly enough, because we're actually on our texture. Watch this. Do you see? I actually see part of the lighting as well. So, not entirely, but yeah, it's what's happening is, I think that could be, it could either be the normal map. It just looks like it needs to be tweaked a little in the, let's see what the UVs look like there. No. It's just a weird lighting that's happening there. So you might be able to just stamp that out. I wouldn't worry too much about it right now. Let me just see one more thing. No, it's still in there. My guess is it might be the normal map's kind of baked a little weird on there. So it is kind of weird. We can actually, later on, we can smooth that out and just stamp that out so it's not in there. But I bet you that might be, looks like it's partially the normals, but it's also a weird UV thing. And then I would do the same thing, move his light around, and start to add some color and stuff to where his ears are. Jinkies, always do that. Start to darken up. Maybe make that color a little bit darker, a little less saturated. And this is also a good time that, like, as you're doing stuff, I'd have another layer, and then I could also go in and just say, oh, you know what, I want to lighten some of this area a bit. There we go. You see that? And just start to add some of those, like, thinner highlights to it. To kind of add a little bit more volume. And I could also then go in and start to do that those veins again, but inside of here. With a nice little bluish, ooh, hello, way big. That's a bit much. Yeah, I don't like that. Where are you? I need something that is going to like a leafish pattern for veins. Oh, that might work. Oh, cracks. Perfect. Yeah, that'll work. So I'm using the cracks brush. Check this out. Do you see that? Where I'm getting some of these veins, like where, you know, where he's more fair. If he's older, you'll see them on the nose as well. And you might actually see them in areas, let me fade that a little bit. If I go too far, it looks like varicose veins. But you just want it like kind of subtle. And definitely in areas that are more like the ear and stuff. Because if you use subsurface scattering, those are going to look really nice inside of there. I could also add details to his lips. And I would just make new layers. If I use the sharp line, turn off the color, turn on height, push that in, shrink that down. Do you see how I can add some details to his lips like this? Like adding some wrinkles to his lips there. There, you see that? If I want to take that, like these little wrinkles, I can use my smear tool and just kind of pull them out a little bit. See that? Just to kind of fade them out a little bit and stuff. And then if I want to do hair, I could do something like, I would probably have a brand new layer for his hair to start off with a base. So I'd create a brand new layer. I would start with a general brush first. Well, actually, let's do, here we go. Let's give him oh, silly me. There we are. Where are we? I need my regular material. I need it to be a darker brown, and then I'll build up to lighter. I do want height map turned on. And I do want that pretty dark and not too saturated, because typically hair is, unless it's like dyed or something, it's typically not like uber bright. Alright, so crank that up. So here's the cool part. You see I have this. I can lay down the base hair like this, right? And I'll just show you how this works. And that follows the pattern of his hair that it's supposed to be. Okay. And once again, it's not that, ooh, I'm just going to do one stroke and then it's perfect. No, you got to kind of, just like hair, you have to kind of build up onto it. But as I do this, what I want you to see, I'm just going to do some of it. I'm kind of following the pattern . And once I have a base of it, then I go back with the lighter colors and start to add the highlights. And while I'm doing this, let's increase the height. Oh yeah, there we go. Look at that. You guys see it? And I'm literally just trying to put that in. leaving some of his scalp. Make it a little more realistic in that way. And you can see how that's building up. That's actually looking kind of cool. Painting in the normal map, painting this. And then once I have like the base, I'm not going to do the whole, but then we could just even kind of there, like that. Then I could choose a different color. On top of that. And then I could start to add like the streaks of the highlines with like a lighter one like this. Let's make sure to set it to UVs. And then you adjust it. I'm not just going to crank this up so you can see. So I wouldn't go that light, but I'm just doing it so you can see it on the, I mean, unless he has frosted tips, you know. But then you can start adding the highlights and just start to put those in. Okay. And then you could get, you know, the hair. So I kind of quickly did it, but do you see that? Check that out. Do you see his hair? Now, obviously, it depends on what kind of hair you have, you know, for your character and stuff. But that should give you the idea of how you could do stuff like the, tone down the bump here. And how shiny it is. And look, oops, jinkies. And turn this on. But here's the eyebrows, check it out. Start lower and then go darker on top. And that way you'll get a much better like fade instead of the I painted on my eyebrows kind of look. Check it out, see? And as you get to the edge, or just have your base be a lot lower so it kind of fades out a little. Check it out, see? And I would do the same for the mustache. And just start to add it and build up on it. Remember to keep turning your model around. There we go. Look at that. Oh, setting up the hairbrush. So I chose My favorite, which is that default plastic material. I turn on height, though I don't start with a lot of height initially, because then you get the bump, but you don't see the color. So I start typically laying out either a very low intensity height, or just, I'm painting mostly the color first, and then I go back over it and start to add the height. But I change the color to, typically, your hair is not going to be a pitch black. It will be like a dark brown or something like that. I choose the brush if I just type in hair, and you'll see there's different densities to it. So for like the thinner hair, like the mustache and stuff, or the eyebrows, I chose hairlines. The hairlines dense is for like the hair on the scalp, or if it's like really thick. I shrink it down. Let me crank it. So for this one, I'm using hairlines. I'm going to shrink it down. Let me turn down my, I don't want the roughness quite as shiny, so I'm going to pull that back a bit. And I will start off not by doing the height yet, just start to get in just some of those little streaks. And remember, the size of your brush is the size of the hairs that you're doing, right? And then once I've got those down, then I'll slightly start to turn up the actual height, so I can get some, force a little bit of lines into there. But as usual, you want to start off with something a little bit lighter and build out so that you have these little stragglies of hair that are there. So I start faded, and then I start to bring it in. So in other words, if I was going to give him a little bit of a goatee, right? I'm going to lower this down. Oops, hello. Switch it to UV. And I'm just going to start to, let me paint these in a little bit like so. Just to start to get, they might even be more faded than that, so it kind of blends in a little bit more. And you notice how it's getting denser or more and more dense as I go along. And then now on the inside, I could start to darken that up, and I could start to turn up the actual height map a bit. Now I'm starting to get that depth. You see that? But it's it's kind of a slow burn where you're just like building up to it. Now I have this. See that? Did that work out better, or need some help? Sure. And then when I want to add some stubble to him, a lot of times if you have a beard and stuff, our skin is different if you shave. You notice that, like where you shave, your skin is just a different texture because you're constantly running a razor against it. So, of course it is, depending on the level of sensitivity and stuff you have. So if I go now and first I might fade out, like I'd go to a previous layer or make a brand new one and just fade it out a little bit. Oops. pick a brush. Let's fade the bejesus out of that. Drop the stroke opacity down. That's better. And I'm just going to go in here and just fade. And it's kind of cool because I already have the veins, so it's kind of fading that out just a little bit. And just say, like, this is where Jacques, you know, does his shaving, so it's lighter and it's underneath the hair, so that's cool. So I'm not covering the hair up, I'm just lightening it underneath. And then I go on top of it, I find the dots. And we see we have these dots here. And I don't choose a black, I choose like a darker brown once again. Because when you go pitch black, it just doesn't really always look as natural. So, but I will pick a pretty dark brownish color. Almost black, but not quite. And then I'll also use the height map on this puppy and push it in just a wee bit. I also don't want it shiny. And let's dim that down a little bit. And we add, there we go, check that out. You see this stubble here? All of a sudden Jacques looking kind of tough. We've got some veins, we've got this faded look, we've got a little bit of the stubble from where his beard grows in, and that's actually looking kind of cool. Now we gotta do the same. I'd have to do the same over here, but you guys get the idea. And I should have had symmetry on, but oh well. You get I'm just demonstrating. I'm not trying to make a masterpiece. Just want to show you some text. But there, can you see that? Now, you really want to see, take a look at the 2D version. You see that? And if it's looking right with the lighting and the texturing, it should look like one of those like latex masks that you would put on, you know, with the details and stuff on it. See? Want to toughen Jacques up. Last thing, we'll put a scar on him. He already has, looks like he took one in the mouth, so, you know. He's used to that kind of stuff. Scars tend to be much lighter. Increase the height. As scar tissue builds up, it goes upward, or like out, unless it's just a ridiculously deep cut that didn't have enough tissue to fill up. So in most cases, brushes, I'll start with fiber lines, and in this one I actually will add a little bit of shininess to it because scar tissue tends to be a little shinier, if you might notice. Oh yeah, that might work. I'm going to cut down the angle jitter, which means it's not going to keep flipping as much left to right. I still want it, I just don't want it as much. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, Jacques, what happened? Make it really, like, you know, kind of go across. Ah, yeah. He's seen things, man. And then you could actually make it larger and just fade it and just kind of go right along, take off the angle jitter entirely, and just kind of widen out the edge a little bit. So that's where the scar tissue builds up. So cool. Do you guys see? So very quick, but just so you could see the different things. Went over how to start dealing with the belt, the clothing, and you just really continue that. Keep adding layers and don't just like, hey, this is metal, so I'm just going to drop, you know, a metal piece on this and then that's it. Think about what you're going to do with it, you know. Apply it based off of your UVs, and this should give you guys a pretty good idea of how to treat your UVs, right? Cool. All right, I'm gonna stop that one.